We're going to start, as we always do, with a land acknowledgement. We're very lucky to recreate on the land around us, and it's really important that we acknowledge that we are taking up that space, and we're very privileged that we can take up that space. And I think it's something we do take for granted, especially living here in the mountains. So what is the state of Snowpack? Who's been to the state of the Snowpack before? Is there anyone that hasn't been before? Okay, a few people. So just to remind those who have come and new people as well, the whole point of these that are set up now, I believe there's 11 chapters across mostly BC, but they are community conversations that are saving lives in the backcountry. And the whole point of them is for recreationalists, guides, forecasters, ski patrol, all coming together and sharing that information for our area. And I think I've said in the past as well, these are live streamed on the website. So if you're going to an area, say Nelson or Revelstoke or even Whistler, you can actually watch these on the website from the last one that can give you the information if you're traveling to a new area. So it's a really great opportunity. There's lots of locations, there's lots of ways to get involved. They are completely charity run from donations. So if you can support, then definitely do. The Polaris sled raffle, all that money goes back into these programs. So if you want to win a sled, definitely in the halftime intermission, have a look, get a raffle ticket. You might win a sled. I just want to say before we get started, we do have to say this disclaimer that this is all observations of best ability. We're all just out here doing our best, but this doesn't actually replace any Avalanche awareness, any courses, and it's kind of up to you guys what you do with the information you're given this evening. Thank you to our big sponsors, so Arc'teryx, Helicat, Polaris, and Klim, and then our local sponsors, obviously Central, who are here providing not only the space, but keeping us all quenched with our thirst, and maybe food afterwards if you're hungry. Fernie Alpine Resort, Avalanche Canada, and then Mountain Addicts, who I am part of, and actually one of the talkers is the owner today. So I've got a few questions for you guys. These are some pictures I've actually taken since the last time we were here. Snow has maybe happened a little bit. But yeah, let's see what everyone else has been up to. Did you come last time? Who came in January? Not too many. This is your first one. We already did that. There were a few hands up for their first one. Who's been out in the backcountry since the last State of the Snowpack? Okay, a few hands up. Anyone find any soft stuff out there? Yeah? There's definitely some if you go looking. Has anyone taken an Avalanche course since they last came? Nice. AST 1s, hands up. AST 2s? Sweet. A couple of different ones there. Did anyone find any good snow? Like, did you have fun? The bar is down here, you're right. The bar's pretty low. So good is actually, yeah, it's amazing what we class as good now. And did anyone submit a min report since last time? Do you count? I don't know. OJ from the South Team Rockies just put a hand up, but she can also see that no one else put their hand up. I think we talked a little bit about this last time, and it is super important to be updating those mins. Not only do they really support the work of the South Rockies team, Nick Dunn, who's going to talk to us later, and Samir and Olivia, who do a lot of work with that, but it also, like, I personally look at it all the time for how does it look? What's it happening out there? Has there been any incidents? And I didn't put my hand up either, so I didn't do a min report either. So I'm just as guilty as you guys. But it is something that really informs, even if you see nothing, it is a great way to support your local community. So yeah, maybe next time when we come in March, you guys will all put your hands up. So this evening we do have two speakers. The first one is going to be Nick Dunn. He is from the South Rockies field team. And then the second one, our guest presenter is Mel Makepeace, which I'll introduce a little bit closer to time after the break. But we're first going to welcome on Nick Dunn to tell us about the state of the Snowpack currently. So can we give him a round of applause as he comes on? Oh. Just press the arrow to the right.
Hello? Great. Hi, I'm Nick. I work for the Avalanche Canada South Rockies field team and Fernie Ski Patrol. In the past, I've taught a lot of ASTs for Mel and College of the Rockies. I grew up in Fernie, skied here a lot, long time. And it's been a real pleasure to work with Avalanche Canada and get out into the backcountry all over the place throughout our region and open some new possibilities with the snowmobile. So that's been super fun. I'm new to snowmobiling and I highly recommend trying it out. Especially this year, like you can get above the crusts and the low snowpack at lower elevations, and you can get up and find some pretty decent snow. So shameless plug to snowmobiles there. This year, kind of worth it for sure. Yeah, so that's a little bit about me. And now we're gonna get into the state of the snowpack. So it's been about 4 weeks since the last event here, and not a lot has changed, but there is some interesting things going on in the snowpack. So the last state of the snowpack, I believe, was the 13th. And on the 14th, we had a huge rain event up to like 4,000 meters. And then it kind of dried out, tapered off, and the high pressure ridge has sort of been the dominating weather factor and influence here lately. So a little bit has changed, but not a whole lot, and we'll get into that here shortly. Whew. So we'll cover a little bit of the good. It's kind of been spring skiing out there lately, which is weird for February. It's tricky to manage in February as well because the sun doesn't stay out quite as long as it does in March and April, right? So you got to be really careful with the ridge on the southerly slopes that you're skiing and make sure that the shade doesn't sneak up on you, because in the fishbowl here we had a really great 15 turns in the sun. It was corn snow, really good skiing, nice and soft. We felt great. And then we crested like sort of the mid-elevation hump in the fishbowl, if you're familiar with that. And it was in the shade from the head wall, and it turned into a side slip for life. So, you know, we'll take the good with the bad here. We did find some nice corn snow in February, which is rare. The other thing is for the month of January, the later part of the January, there's not a lot of avalanche hazard out there. So it was some good time for exploring. And I got a photo of some snowmobile tracks here in Elkford, some high marking, people stepping out into bigger terrain and exploring things that, you know, maybe they wouldn't get to do on a typical year up in Elkford, where there's typically a shallower snowpack and some instability there. So people were getting after it up there. A couple buddies of mine skied some of these chutes through here, and it looked great. And they were able to find a little bit of soft snow in there as well, because the rain didn't reach as high in Elkford. So there was still some soft snow to be found up high there. So they made do with the good conditions and got out and explored and skied some bold lines that they've been looking at for years. And then the third image there is a zone called the Gorge, also in Elkford. This is your typical terrain trap, and usually we wouldn't go into something like that, but with the low hazard and the hard surface crust, we were able to do a little bit more exploring than we usually would. So that was kind of fun and nice, and the sunshine felt great on our faces and everything through January there. It kept the spirits alive for sure. The bad is up high, the rain might not have reached certain places, so there's still snow available for transport up there, and we were seeing the winds move the snow around at upper elevations, building wind slabs in steep exposed terrain and extreme terrain. Also, we sort of found a widespread surface hoar layer growing throughout our region. Don't know if you guys saw that or heard about that, but it was out there. It was really prevalent. Some of them were up to 30 mils in size, which is quite large for a surface hoar. And it was growing everywhere, all aspects, all elevations. So that was something that we were concerned about going forward. We were like, oh man, next time it snows, this might become a real problem for us. So we were closely monitoring how that developed. And with the warm temperatures, those southerly slopes got lots of pinwheeling and snowballing and stuff, making the surface conditions kind of rough and variable. So we found most of the good skiing through late January, early February on sheltered northerly slopes where the sun hadn't wreaked its havoc yet, and there was no snow on the surface hoar yet. So it kind of felt like almost skiing powder. recycled powder, sometimes we call it, snow that has fallen a long time ago and starts to sort of rot out with the temperatures. Almost can trick you into feeling like you're powder skiing if you're particularly desperate. So that was sort of the meh in January there and early February. And the ugly. In places, the snowmobile travel was pretty tricky. They were sliding all over the place, really hard to get an edge in side hill and access some of those slopes. So that was particularly difficult. The ski touring was particularly difficult, where the sun had done its thing through those warming events in later January, early February. You can see this is a photo at the bottom of the fishbowl there, and it looks kind of like a skating rink or the moon, depending on your preferences and your imagination. And then at the end of January 25th, we had a little storm event. It didn't snow a whole lot. Mostly it snowed in the Lizard Range. We got about 15, 20 centimeters here, 5 to 10 up in the northern parts of our region, like Elkford and the Crow's Nest. And when that snow came, it came in warm, which is great for our surface hoar and facet problem that we were developing through the high pressure. So in the below tree line, up to about 1,800-ish meters, that warm precipitation kind of eliminated some of the surface hoar problems that we were kind of nervous about happening when we saw the incoming precipitation. So that was good. But where it didn't come in warm and where the snow remained cold, this surface hoar and facets on a crust got buried by the storm snow. So this third photo over here, we were doing some snow profile, snowpack stability tests in Elkford area. There's only 5 centimeters on it, so it wasn't too sporty yet. But as more snow comes in the future, we might start to see more action on that. And this is an extended column test. It's testing the propagation propensity of the snow. So if there was a failure, would that snow fail wide and propagate into a large avalanche? With this ECT test that we did, we got it on 2 taps. So we found that to be particularly sensitive in that area. And we're still finding some results like that in both the Lizard Range, Flathead, and the northern parts of our region up near Elkford. In the Crow's Nest, it's not so prevalent because they've not got a ton of snow and the wind's been howling up there as per usual, knocking over these weak sugary crystals and making them making the snow bond a little bit better up there. So this is something that we're definitely going to keep an eye out on in the future and going forward. We'll talk a little bit more about that on some of the next slides. So here's a little recap of some significant storms and weather events that have happened over the year. So in December, we started off with extreme precipitation, predominantly rain. The rain line was hovering around 1,500, 1,600 meters. So it was rain in the valley, but it was absolutely dumping up top. It's pretty interesting, like snowmobiling around and skiing around in the South Rockies region, because down low the access is so tricky, the snowpack is so thin, and then you hit about 1,600 meters and all of a sudden there's a meter of snow on the ground. So that was from our early December atmospheric rivers that dumped a ton of precipitation on us. The thing about that was, yeah, the freezing levels, like I mentioned, were really high. So after that, we got a little bit of snow, 70 centimeters-ish, and that fell to valley bottom, which was nice. Kind of gave us some optimism for the season. We were like, okay, it's starting to turn on. This is great. With the new snow and the wind, it moved in the South Rockies, it moved the snow around a lot and led to some areas being really thin and some areas being thick. And in those thinner areas, a deep persistent slab problem started to develop, meaning the bottom of the snowpack was starting to lose strength and facet out, and the grains weren't bonding together very well. And that was solely isolated to the Crow's Nest Pass area, just with the extreme winds moving the snowpack around, making it quite variable in that area. That's what we saw happening out there. And then we got high pressures around New Year's Eve for a brief period. Beginning in January, we had some early snowfall, and then rain to tree line and increased freezing levels around January 13th, 14th, pretty much the day and night of the last state of the snowpack. So hopefully the day and the night of this one, we get some snow afterwards instead of rain. Here's hoping, right? So after that, the freezing levels dropped, and then a high pressure ridge became the prominent weather factor over BC, meaning those clear skies, relatively cold temps for most of January, and then it warmed up a little bit. But while the skies were clear and the temperatures were cold, moisture and water vapor was moving around inside the snowpack, creating these weak faceted grains near the surface of the snowpack. If you recall, there was a really thick crust on the surface. So on the surface of the snow, the top of that crust started to rot out and break down a little bit, leading to these sharp faceted crystals on the surface. And below that crust, which acted as like a cap, a barrier, it created a little bit of pressure inside of the snowpack, and the water vapor moved up and down throughout the snow, creating these faceted grains. So in some places, you can find lots of soft, sugary snow underneath that crust. The good news there is that crust is so thick, it's very difficult for a human to trigger anything below that crust because of the strength of that crust, right? So this is kind of what was happening in January. Some interesting processes in the snowpack. I know it seemed like it was kind of boring and benign through January, but there was some interesting things happening within the snow. And then on the surface of the snow, under those clear, calm, cold nights, we started to get surface hoar developing. That's a photo of the surface hoar there on top of a little thin crust. So this was taken up in the upper tree line elevation where that temperature crust wasn't super thick, and it's got those large surface hoar crystals growing on top of it. In February and late January, we had a little bit of a refresh. Not huge amounts of snow, but it was nice to see some snow falling. January 25th, we got about 20-30 centimeters through those 2 days, so that was pretty nice. And then recently, February 8th, I think, was the last storm. Lizard Range kind of got the best of it with about 10 centimeters. The resort was skiing surprisingly good considering the rain that fell through that storm as well. So that was nice to see and kind of boosted morale a little bit. You know, when the skiing's been so challenging lately, a little bit of snow goes a long way. So these rising freezing levels in the last storm, like it exited quite warm, right? It was super warm before the storm. That warm air stood in place. The weather came in, rained down low, snowed up high, and that led us to have another crust on the surface. So right now, the surface of the snow is a little up high. It's a little bit of snow on a crust, on a little bit of snow on a huge crust. So it's a very crusty snowpack in the upper snowpack at the moment. So the thing about this crust, it's from early February when that hot air was here and it kind of felt like April instead of February. It might not exist on the northerly aspects and upper elevations. So I'm talking sort of above 2,000 meters. If you're venturing into mountains like that, you might find that there's no crust up high, which is concerning because of these weak layers that form through January, right? So if there's no crust to cap those weak layers, you might find them to be a little bit more reactive in these upper elevations. This is our seasonal history so far. So this is a photo of the Morse weather plot at Morse Ridge. If you look at it, it's pretty close to average, despite the long drought period where the line kind of flattens off through January. We're still at about average snowfall in the upper elevations. Down low, walking around town, definitely not average, right? We've got a lot of rain, but up high where the temps have remained cold, we've got about an average amount of snowfall for the year. The chart on the right there is our cumulative snowfall. So this is just tracking the snow events that we've had through the season. You can see December was a little bit snowy. End of December was quite snowy. Beginning of January, a little bit of snow. And then it tapers off through the end of January. And early February, there's a little bit of snow, but if you look at the numbers on the right-hand side, it's less than 15 centimeters on each snowfall event. So dribs and drabs, little refreshes, but over time, those can start to build problems, especially where there's no crust up in the alpine. So what are we seeing? The surface hoar growth was large and widespread across our region being the Lizard, Flathead, Bull River, Elkford, Crow's Nest Pass, and Akamina-Kashina. So we saw a ton of surface hoar growing everywhere, all elevations, all aspects. Wherever the sky was visible, there was surface hoar growing overnight. We found a lot of faceting above and below the crust, the January 14th crust. So like I said earlier, the surface of that crust was starting to break down, and below it, there was some processes happening in the snowpack where the grains started to become these sharp, crystally grains and not bond together very well. Finally, a new surface crust is formed. It's thick and bridging at the tree line and below tree line, particularly on the solar aspects where the sun was baking those steep solar slopes over the last sort of week and a half. So that's sort of what we're seeing so far. This photo on the left is the surface hoar growth in the Flathead. So you can see these sharp, feathery crystals. It's basically frozen dew that forms on the surface of the snow. And then on the right-hand side, here's a profile from the Harvey Pass area that was dug today by the South Rockies team. So you can see where the two crusts are and some soft snow above and between them. As of today, February 10th, these are our danger ratings for avalanche danger in our region. So you'll notice that the Lizard Range and Flathead is still moderate. The Crow's Nest Pass area is rated as low with no avalanche problems. Keeping in mind that no avalanche problems on the board doesn't mean that it's 100% completely safe and there's no chances of avalanches at all. You can still find avalanches in these steep, exposed lee slopes where the wind has been transporting soft, dry snow and building isolated wind slabs in alpine terrain in the Crow's Nest Pass. Wednesday, we have moderate, low in the Lizard Range and Flathead, and low in the Crow's Nest. And our outlook for the next few days is moderate, low in the Lizard Flathead, and it's going to continue to be low in the Crow's Nest. We have some uncertainties that I'll talk about later with these forecasts. So we've left the door open for Friday to go low, depending on the observations and the data that we continue to gather in this region throughout the week. So we'll keep an eye on that going forward. And this is our avalanche hazard outlook for the time being. Our problem on the board in the Lizard and Flathead is a persistent slab. So this is previous storm snow and wind distributed snow. It's found at upper elevations where there's no bridging crust. A bridging crust means a thick, dense crust that the pressure of a human or snowmobile can't get through to trigger failure on the weak layer below it. So this is our problem. It exists on all aspects in the alpine and tree line in the Lizard Range and Flathead. And then our chances of avalanches are possible, and they're going to be relatively small size, 1 to 2.5 avalanches. So depending on where you are and what kind of terrain you're in, there is possibility for wide propagation on these buried weak layers. They tend to fail wide and suddenly. So keep that in mind when you're venturing out, and you should treat these alpine and tree line slopes with caution. So in the Lizard and Flathead, there's no instabilities in the mid or lower snowpack. Generally, even though I'm talking about this faceting below the January 14th crust, that crust is so thick and supportive that the instabilities below it aren't concerning. And with the warm temperatures that we've been seeing lately, it's starting to heal itself. So we're not too concerned about the mid and lower snowpack in the Lizard and the Flathead. There's spotty surface hoar and facets on a crust in the tree line and alpine. Spotty being you're going to find it on these steeper slopes and on these sheltered slopes. So keep that in mind when you're traveling through the backcountry. Areas with wind loading and preferential deposition from the last storms are ripe for human triggering. So wind loading is when the wind picks up snow, transports it, and deposits it on another slope. Preferential deposition is very similar, but this happens during a storm. So while the snow is falling, the wind might be blowing, leading to deeper snow pockets in certain areas. And where the deeper snow is, slab is thicker and more cohesive. So that's why it's more ripe for human triggering. In Elkford, where there's only 5 centimeters on this surface hoar and facet problem, it's difficult to trigger a slab avalanche because there's not quite enough snow to meet the threshold for that. So in areas where there is more snow and where you want to be skiing, this is also where you're going to find likely triggering of these avalanches on this weak layer. In the South Rockies, it's the similar story. There's not really any concerns in the mid and lower snowpack. The warm temperatures lately have been doing very good things to bond our snow that's already fallen together. So we're not particularly concerned about the problems deeper into our snowpack. There's not been as much recent snow in the South Rockies in the Crow's Nest area, but the wind has been howling as per usual up there. So it's leading to wind slab development in isolated, alpine, and extreme terrain. Our travel advice from Avalanche Canada for these problems and for these regions are quite similar. We want to be careful with wind-loaded pockets, especially near ridge crests and rollovers. We want to be alert to changing conditions and seeing what's going on. These persistent problems are a little bit tricky to manage. It's sort of heads up hockey out there, so to speak, and you're always paying attention to the snow around you, listening to it, seeing if there's any cracking, that sort of thing, signs of instability. The South Rockies team today out in the Flathead, they were reporting plenty of whumps and shooting cracks leaving their skis. So when you're seeing things like that, you have direct observations that there's an instability that's ripe for human triggering in the snowpack. So we want to really pay attention, and persistent problems require careful slope evaluation. So we kind of give you an idea of where these persistent problems are in our hazard forecast. And before entering a slope like that, you want to really consider what you're stepping into and what that looks like for the distribution of the problem in that area. Our confidence for this forecast is moderate. We have limited field observations. There's a few hands that went up for min reports in the area, but it's been fairly sparse lately. So there's not a ton of good feedback or good observations coming in for us to build a really comprehensive forecast. So like Jade said, I encourage people who are going out in the backcountry to submit those min reports. Even if you don't have anything to say, a photo is worth 1,000 words, and we really appreciate all of the data that we can get so that we can build a more comprehensive public forecast. And we have a little bit of uncertainty to the sensitivity of human triggers on this problem, the persistent slab problem. You know, the direct evidence of the shooting cracks and the whumping that we've seen lately leads us to believe that they're quite ripe and primed for human triggers where a slab of it exists above them, but there's still some questions about how wide these avalanches will break and how far they will run, or if they'll, you know, these things remain kind of where our uncertainty lies. The weather forecast going forward, we're going to have more seasonal temperatures. So that's nice. Hopefully we get a little bit more seasonal snowfall as well. It looks like we're going to have some fairly steady, moderate winds, maybe gusting strong at some points. So where there's dry snow available to transport, the wind will be moving this snow around and potentially be building wind slabs in upper elevations. So this is something to consider. And if you look at the long-term forecast outlook, maybe looks like we might get a little bit more snow later in the week. So here's hoping to that. And when that snow falls, these persistent slab problems and weak layers in the near surface of our snowpack are going to be something that we're keeping a very keen eye on. So tonight's takeaways, it's a little bit shorter and sweeter maybe than the usual state of the snowpacks, because we've not had a ton going on. But the takeaways for tonight are that we have a relatively solid mid and lower snowpack throughout our region. The persistent slabs remain active to human triggering in the Lizard and Flathead. Here's a photo from the South Rockies team today with the shooting cracks above their skis. So that's something that we're definitely keeping an eye on, right? And the winds can still move dry snow around where it's available. So in those upper elevations where the snow came in dry on the 8th, the winds have the potential to move that snow around. Entering a period of brief high pressure, hopefully. Looks like it's going to be a little bit cold and clear for the next few days, with maybe some snow in the later in the week, in about 5 to 7 days, hopefully. Near surface instabilities are sort of driving our hazard, and when more snow falls, these instabilities will continue to persist, but they'll be deeper in the snowpack. So again, when that new snow comes, hopefully soon, these instabilities in the snowpack are likely still going to be around, and that's something that we definitely want to keep an eye on and have in the front of our minds when we're heading out into the backcountry. And that's sort of all I got. Is there any questions? Great. Nailed it.
There you go. Okay, so we're going to take a brief 10-minute break, just so you guys can refresh your beers, and we'll be back with Mel after the intermission. If you have a chance during the break, you could also enter to win a sled. And we can get started with the second half. So we're going to get started with the second half with Melissa Makepeace. She is actually my boss, so this is quite interesting having her here. Me and Nick were both laughing that both our bosses are here this evening. But Mel is the owner of Mountain Addicts. She's also an ACMG guide and is a guiding manager up at Last Frontier. So we're very lucky to have a week that aligns with the State of the Snowpack to come and present to us, because she is a hard lady to track down. And yeah, I just want to say a little bit about Mel in terms of she is the ultimate badass in the backcountry, and I'm embarrassing her now, but she is a great guide, and she's going to talk a little bit about some route planning, which is something I feel like all of us kind of look at and try and figure out, and sometimes it can be a bit confusing, especially when you're looking at new areas to go to. So Mel's going to be talking about how to plan for your next adventure. So can we welcome Mel on stage? Thank you. Can you just press that button?
My wrist is so mangled. It's like, ow. Thank you. All right. Can you hear me in this? Okay. I don't think I've used a microphone before. This is one of the more intimidating things that I've done ever. So please laugh at my jokes. Okay. Route planning. Jade asked me to come here and talk about something, and a friend of mine suggested route planning because it's one of my favorite things to do, and I think I'm okay at it. Initially, I wanted to say, no, Jade, I will not do that, but here I am. And I'm glad that you guys all came because this is a great topic. It's different than trip planning, though. I want to point that out. So trip planning, that's when you figure out who you're going with and who's bringing what and what time you're meeting and where you're leaving your safety plan, what time you're coming home, all that stuff. And we're going to focus primarily on route planning tonight. So planning for your next adventure. So when you are heading somewhere that's new to you, you've never been there before, you're planning your trip, How much time do you typically put into route planning specifically? And what resources do you use? Can you think about that for a minute? So how much time, are you laughing at me? I didn't even tell a joke yet. Okay, I see. How much time do you put into route planning? Robin? 4 or 5 weeks, great. Some of us maybe just put a couple minutes into it, and then others, maybe we're spending hours poring over maps and other resources. So think about the resources you use. And then why do we need a solid route plan? Does anyone have an idea of why we want to have a good route plan when we're venturing into the backcountry somewhere new? They want to share with us, why do we need a route plan? Great. So Robin's saying she wants to avoid avalanche paths, maybe specifically when there's certain problems that we're working with. There's some areas that we might not want to put our skis into. Why else might we want to have a thorough route plan? Great. We want to be able to predict what we're getting into. So this gentleman said we want to make known what we don't know. So what are we getting into? Where are we going? What's that going to look like? And at the beginning, we are going to be guessing quite a lot when we start. And then as we become more experienced, you'll feel more confident in your guessing. And then how much time and detail are we putting into a route plan? Any ideas for timing? How much time do we want to put into a route plan? Not 4 or 5 weeks, Robin, but it's going to depend on the trip itself, right? If it's a very complex trip, you're going to be putting in more time than if it's a simple trip. I feel like I'm getting ahead of myself here a bit, but today we're going to talk about why we route plan. So I've already got into that. How we route plan. So what are some of the resources that we use when we're route planning? Pardon? Maps. Great. What else? You guys were like, I didn't expect this to be interactive. Aren't I? I'm here to talk, not you, right? Apps, great. So we're using apps, we're using guidebooks, all kinds of stuff. We're also going to talk about using the route plan, how we use the route plan when we're out there, and then evaluating our route plan, because that's going to give us a lot of feedback for our next route plan. So why we route plan, see, I told you I got ahead of myself. So we want to talk about what slopes we're avoiding, thinking about what's known. And then if you're using the Avalanche Canada evaluator, you're going to be using the trip planner. And in the trip planner, a big part of that is knowing what the type of terrain you're getting into is on the 8th scale, so the Avalanche Terrain Exposure Scale. Are you going into simple terrain? Are you going into challenging terrain or complex? And now there is extreme and non-avalanche terrain as well. Those are new this year. So we need to have a route plan because we need to know what type of terrain we're going into so that we can use the Avalanche Canada trip planner tool to give us the terrain guidance. So whether or not the trip is not recommended, regular caution, or extra caution. So we need to have a route plan so we know what kind of terrain we're getting into on the 8th scale. Also, like Robin said, avalanche problems. If we're avoiding a certain avalanche problem, it might exist at a certain elevation band or on a certain aspect. And if we don't have a route plan, we just go out ski touring, we might not know where we're putting our skis into. So we want to know what aspect and what elevation our intended route has so that we can avoid getting caught in avalanches. We also want to know what slopes we're avoiding, which is super applicable with slope angle, for example. So having a good idea of the slope angle that you're traveling in is super important. And then decision points. So a trip plan is going to help us figure out where those decision points are. Where might I want to evaluate a slope? Where might I decide I want to turn around or potentially choose a different route? Timing is also practical. So we want to think about the physical ability of the group, the travel conditions conditions, what is our turnaround time. And if we haven't made a thorough route plan and we're just guessing, oh, that's going to take 4 hours, where are you getting that information? A route plan is going to help you have that correct timing planned. It's really weird talking on the mic. Okay, plan B as well. We want to be planning for plan B. If we can't do our original trip as intended, to avoid getting pigeonholed and just going and potentially getting into trouble, having a thorough route plan is going to ensure that you have a plan B so that you can avoid just getting that tunnel vision and being where you don't want to be. And then, of course, you can just get lost. So a good route plan should hopefully avoid you becoming lost in the backcountry and needing to call for rescue. So we talked about resources as well. People use maps and people use apps. Guidebooks, we still use those? Guidebooks? Okay, good. We love a good guidebook. MINs are super, super helpful for route planning. You can get a lot of information. I like to sometimes filter those MINs or look at archives as well, because people have been everywhere. So there is information on your route out there if you know where to look at. Which leads me to blogs. Blogs are another excellent source of route planning information. Somebody has been where you want to go and they've written a blog about it, and they've posted photos, they've posted videos, they've posted GPX tracks, they've posted what they've done wrong, what they would do differently next time. It's all out there. Of course, you do want to consider the source of the information and don't take everything as gold standard. This person did this. We don't know maybe what their experience level is like, but it's a great source of information. And then word of mouth, asking your friends, texting Mel. Mel, I'm going to Tunnel Creek. What do you think of this route? Can be another good source of information. And then for me, Google Earth is my gold standard. I use Google Earth for route planning 100% of the time. It's amazing. You can add paths, export them to your phone, and we'll talk more about that for my upcoming example. So we've used all those resources, we've planned our trip, and now we're out in the field and we're using that route plan to navigate, to get to our ski objective. How do we use this in the field? So first and foremost, I recommend recording your track as you go. So as soon as you head out, grab your phone, hit record on your Gaia GPS app or whatever it is, and record that. It's super important for reflecting later on and matching your actual track to what your planned track was. You can also follow it back to the car if you need to. It's a great tool, so always record your track. And then while you're out there, take photos. Photos are really crucial. When you're ski touring along in the valley bottom and you're super bored, maybe your friends stop to take a layer off, take some photos of the terrain, get an eye on your ski line. It's really an important part of route planning while you're already en route as well. When you're on top of something, it can be really hard to look down slope and understand where you are. And frequently I've gone back and used photos I took earlier in the day to figure out exactly where I am and where the fresh powder was, because it was all tracked out somewhere else. Breaks are super important for using your route plan. You want to stop and chat with your buddies. So we want to take breaks. We can have a drink and some food, but also it really encourages conversation. So if we're just putting our head down and marching toward an objective, it's not giving us time to look around at our friends and say, hey, what do you think about the route plan? Or what do you think about the wind blowing the snow over that ridge up there? So breaks are really important. Even if you feel that you don't need a break, it's really helpful for encouraging conversation and looking at a route plan. So communication with these route plans is really important. How is it going? Do we need to deviate from our route plan? These breaks are really going to help facilitate communication as well. Okay. evaluating the route plan. I mentioned this a bit earlier, but what benefits do we gain from evaluating the route plan? Yeah, we can improve it for, it's pretty simple, but yeah, we can improve it for next time. And you want to expect to be wrong and expect to be guessing the first few times you go out. And then also notice, where was I right? Oh, I really nailed that. That was good. I should remember to do that again in the future. Comparing the plan against your actual track is going to help you get better as well. And I wish somebody had told me this when I first started ski touring, because you're going to increase your level of competency with route planning the earlier you start. And then what was right? I've already mentioned that. Anyway, on to the cooler stuff. Route plan example, kindergarten couloir. So a few weeks ago, I had some time off from work midwinter, which never happens. And I was really excited to go skiing here in Fernie and show off Fernie to my boyfriend who was visiting. Oh yeah, we're gonna go ski touring all over the place. But as Nick said, it didn't snow. So there was no good snow anywhere. Like, oh, what are we gonna do? So we headed up to the Rockies, the north, well, not quite the north, the mid-Rockies. Is there a mid-Rockies? Whatever the Lake Louise area is, that's where we went. You can drive and park your car at 2,000 meters, and it was dry snow. It's awesome. So that's what we did day one. We parked at 2,000 meters, and we went for a ski tour on some really gentle slopes, got a feel for the snowpack. And I was with my boyfriend, who is also he's a mountain guide and I'm a ski guide. So it's really easy to think like, oh, you know, you're experienced, you just go for it. But actually every night we were sitting down and route planning and using all of these tools and going through the steps because we were both sort of unfamiliar with the area. I'd been there before, he'd never been there before. But we were spending at least an hour route planning every night. And then on the fourth day, we were feeling like, okay, we've got a handle on this. We want to ski some north-facing stuff, and we want to go ski a fun couloir. That'll be, we'll get some good photos. So we used all of these resources to plan our trip, maps and guidebooks, and I read mins. I was like constantly refreshing. Does anyone have a new min? I just want to know what the snow is like and where is it good? And I was texting my friends that I know ski in the area, like, Will, where should I go skiing? You're familiar with the Rockies. And, you know, I work as a ski guide, but I'm still using all of these resources and trying to find where the good snow is. We're looking at the avalanche hazard. This is a bit of a sidebar from route planning specifically, but I feel like it's important, especially with the hazard that we have right now, moderate in the alpine, low at tree line, and low below tree line. Good skiing, it said, this is January 20th, can still be found in sheltered tree line, but bad skiing can also be found, it says. So we were really desperate to find good snow. So similar to now, we looked at the hazard and then the problems. So there's actually a wind slab problem, a persistent slab problem, and a deep persistent slab problem. So even though the hazard is moderate, you might remember from your AST1 course that more people are killed in avalanches when the hazard is moderate versus when the hazard is high. So it's still a dangerous avalanche condition. So we knew that we didn't want to be skiing anywhere where we could trigger a wind slab, persistent slab, or more specifically a deep persistent slab. And that's how we landed on the couloir. Okay, this is a nice thick snowpack. The snow is constantly impacting that area. We're not going to choose a big alpine feature. And then I'm not shaming in any way here. This is amazing that this just happened to work out like this. But that same day, somebody did trigger a deep persistent slab in the alpine, moderate hazard, size 2. They went for a big ride into a terrain trap, but they were okay. But another just kind of sidebar with the avalanche hazard and the way things are right now, I thought it was pretty good to point that out. So Moving on, we also read a lot of blogs about the couloir we decided to ski. So it's north facing, it's got a lot of snow. We shouldn't trigger a persistent slab in there, especially if we just boot pack straight up the middle where the slough has constantly been pouring in there. We could see evidence of old avalanches, and we felt pretty safe about going in here. So I read probably 4 or 5 different blogs on this specific couloir, and I gained some great information. A couple people said, follow the summer trail, but don't go all the way to the lake because you have to backtrack 500 meters and it adds a lot of time to your day. So people were just following the summer trail all the way to Boom Lake, and then they have to turn around and go back to the couloir. It's like, oh, okay, that's a great tip. Like, we're going to save quite a lot of time if I follow that information. And then somebody else said that they had some years ago, they were boot packing up the center of the chute, and then they'd stepped off to the side and they triggered a deeper avalanche where the snow was more shallow. So you can get lots of information from blogs. Everybody's been somewhere around here. Love blogs. It's a little bit hard to see here, but I pulled up Google Earth and I made my trip plan based on the information I'd gotten from the blogs and maps. So I clicked add path and I added this path up the summer road. And then here it says leave summer trail because I don't want to go that extra 500 meters and then have to backtrack to the couloir, which I'd read on the blogs. So I made a note here, make sure to leave the summer trail at that particular juncture. And another thing I noticed while I was making this route plan, it's like, well, we climb up a hill and then we're on the other side and then we have to go down a hill. A blog I had read said on deep snowpack years, you can just go up the creek. And Lake Louise had the most snow it's had in recorded history for that time of year ever. So it was a deep snowpack. So when we were out there ski touring, I saw the creek and I didn't want to go up the hill. So I went straight down the creek, but then travel was still difficult. So you can see that we've gone boop, 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 up to the summer trail here. So this purple line is the route that I'd planned on Google Earth and then exported to my GPS on my phone. And then the blue line is our actual track. These tracks are also really helpful for finding the parking. That can often be the most difficult part of the day. Where do I park? So having that marked on the GPS is really handy as well. And then I talked about taking photos. This isn't the kindergarten couloir. This was from Mount Whymper the day before. We'd gone up to ski the north side of Whymper. And on the way up, I saw that there were tracks everywhere, but then this snowfield didn't have any tracks. So I took this photo, and then when we were on our way down, I was able to easily pick out the tree islands and figure out where I was, and then say, like, that's where we need to be, because you can't see over in this photo, you can't tell, but when you're skiing down, it just rolls over, you can't see anything. But I was able to line up the trees and say, that's the little chute where we need to be. And I pulled out my phone and I showed it to the mountain guide I was with, and we both looked at it. I'm like, yeah, that's where we want to be. And off we went. So taking photos and doing these route plans is not just for beginners. Everybody can gain fresh powder snow by making a thorough route plan. So next, expectation versus reality. We've taken the plan that we've made on Google Earth the night before. You can see I had leave summer trail, but we actually left a little bit before because there was a track. It's like, oh, there's somebody else has already made this track, and pulled out the map, and we debated whether or not we should follow that track, and we decided to follow it, and then walk down the creek bed a bit, and then up to the couloir. Yeah, route planning. I wish I had like a fun video to show of us skiing the couloir or something, but I don't. That's all I've got for you on route planning. Thank you for bearing with me. I'm a much better instructor with material that I'm like familiar with, and not so great about just hanging out at a bar chatting. Go ahead. Oh, do I write blogs? That's a great question. No. Yeah, I like to make little videos now. That's my new thing. I just bought a sports action camera, but I don't write many blogs. I did write one blog once on route planning, and somebody was able to find it in the Wayback Machine. And it basically goes through step by step by step of how to make a route plan on Google Earth. I'd love to be able to get that and put it back on my website. We should talk to the web developer about that. I don't know how it just disappeared, but anyway, it exists on the Wayback Machine. Usually when I'm searching for a blog, like I just typed in kindergarten couloir blog search. Yeah. Good question. Other questions?
How was skiing in the couloir?
Oh, that's a great question. How was the skiing in the couloir? It was better than we expected. Same with Mount Wynford the day before. On the way up, we're not really getting much ski pen, and we're thinking like, oh, this is going to be terrible. Like, we're not feeling enthusiastic. But then when we started skiing, it was actually good. But we have this, what is good for us is lower now. But yeah, it was edgeable. It was fun. It was steep, really enjoyable. Kindergarten couloir, it's named kindergarten couloir because it's like an easy or tame couloir, but it's still a serious couloir. People have gotten in avalanches, I found out by reading on blogs in that couloir. But yeah, it was really fun, and I would recommend it. It's close to the road. That was the other, so we were thinking about persistent slabs. We don't want to trigger a persistent slab avalanche. We want north facing because we want good skiing, and then we wanted something that was close to the road because we want to go back and have a hot tub and go to a nice dinner later. So this is a great trip. You know, we talked about route planning and how much detail you should go into. A little sidebar from that is when you are planning a trip, if the terrain is really complex or you're dealing with a complex avalanche problem, you want to find a trip that is easy to plan, close to the road. It's not going to be, you know, like a 20-kilometer trip. I think this was 13K return. So mostly flat too. And it's just the couloir that you had to boot pack up. So it was a nice, easy trip for us. It's near Castle Junction in Banff National Park. So Castle Junction would be if you hang a right at Radium and go toward Lake Louise, Banff, when you get to the number one. Yes, but it didn't, the numbers they have for the elevation, I believe they start at the valley bottom, and we were able to switch back up on our skis for at least a third, and then just boot pack up the other 2/3. Yeah. Yes.
Where do you get your slope angle data?
Oh, great question. Slope angle data. I get a lot of my slope angle data from Gaia, the app specifically. So it has an overlay option. And I do use Gaia for route planning if Google Earth isn't available to me, because maybe I'm in the backcountry and I don't have my laptop. I maybe could do it on the Google Earth app, but Gaia is pretty straightforward for route planning. And then I overlay the slope angle on Gaia. FatMap used to be a really good one, but that doesn't exist anymore. People use the OnX Backcountry for slope angle overlays. Most GPS apps, if you look into them, they will have a slope angle overlay. Okay. Yeah, Gaia is, I'm a little hesitant to move to CalTopo or something that other newer guides are using, just because I have so much information in my Gaia that I'm not ready to switch to another app and move all that information. And same with Google Earth. If you not a great example here, but I've just got probably hundreds of files with routes and then little markers about where you should leave the trail or where the hut is or where there's a particular hazard. So it'd be hard for me to switch to another platform. Yeah. Other questions? Yes.
Yeah, I got a question. So I find that artists aren't even at land routes and stuff, and along the ridges and stuff, like how wide is wide enough for a ridge to travel, you know? Or if there's gonna be cornices like forming and then it's getting sketchy. So you're going on cornices kind of like, do you have any input on like how do you look at ridges?
Yeah, right. Yeah, great. So Bruce Tremper in his book says, never trust a cornice.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're terrifying, absolutely. And then you can get tricked, even they'll like grow over ridges into trees and you're thinking that you're on ground, but really you're on a cornice that is like piled into a tree that's on the other side of the ridge. Of course, probing is one way that you can get a feel for if you're on terrain. And then if you're probing and there's a lot of snow between you and the terrain, you might not be in a safe location because of the cornice will cantilever back. But if you're probing and it's shallow and you're on the terrain, that's a safer bet for sure. But just more room than you think they need and probing.
I'm thinking like on the route planning side, because that's kind of like
Right.
kind of like, okay, yeah, you can go on the ridge, but like if you want to plan ahead, right? Like, how like, sometimes the ridge is pretty skinny.
Yeah.
And, like,
That's
Google Maps, it's hard to know where to like,
totally. Yeah, yeah, it is. You know, I'll just kind of err on lower on the ridge on the good side. So the good side would be the windward and sunny aspect. So more of like your south through west is going to have the more shallow snowpack. And then typically in this area, the cornices are going to be on the more like north through east aspects. So planning your route on Google Earth further down that windward or southwest aspect. Yeah. Other questions? Okay, great. I hope you invite me back. I'll be less nervous next time. Thank you, guys.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of this evening. Can we give a big thank you to the Central for hosting us? To Nick from the South Rockies team for coming up and talking, and great. And obviously to Mel as well for her presentation. So there is only one State of the Snowpack left for this season. We will be back here in a month's time on March 10th with hopefully a lot to talk about because it snowed a whole bunch. But thank you all for coming and we'll see you in a month's time.